Have you ever felt like your biggest enemy is not the people around you, not your bad luck, not even your lack of money, but someone much closer? Someone who wakes up with you every morning, looks at you in the mirror, knows every dream you have, and still quietly destroys those dreams before they even get a chance to grow? That enemy is invisible. It never shouts. It never attacks with force. Instead, it whispers, "Start tomorrow. You're not ready. What if you fail? Maybe this dream isn't meant for you." And before you realize it, another year is gone. The dream is still alive inside your heart, but your courage has become smaller than your fear. Now imagine something for a moment. Imagine standing at the foot of a massive mountain. Its peak disappears into the clouds. Everyone around you says it is impossible to climb. Some people try and quit halfway. Others never even take the first step. You look at the mountain and think it is your greatest obstacle. But what if I told you that the mountain is not outside you? What if the mountain is inside your own mind? What if every fear, every excuse, every habit, every emotional wound has silently built that mountain over the years? And what if I also told you that the same person who built that mountain has the power to destroy it? Today is not just another motivational story. Today is a journey into the place most people spend their entire lives avoiding, their own mind. By the end of this journey, you may never look at yourself the same way again, because real success does not begin when the world changes. It begins when the battle inside you finally ends. Before we begin, if stories that change the way you think are something you truly enjoy, then subscribe to this channel, because every video here is created to help you become stronger than the person you were yesterday. Now close your eyes for just a second and imagine your future self standing in front of you, calm, confident, disciplined, peaceful, successful. That version of you smiles and says only one sentence: "I was always inside you. You just had to stop fighting yourself." Chapter 1: The Invisible Enemy. Picture a young man named Arjun. From the outside, his life looked completely normal. He had a decent job, supportive parents, good friends, and dreams bigger than anyone around him. Every January, he bought a new notebook and wrote ambitious goals: learn new skills, build a business, get fit, become financially free, travel the world. Every year, those pages looked beautiful. Every December, they looked exactly the same: empty. At first, Arjun blamed time. Then he blamed his job. Later, he blamed his family responsibilities. Sometimes he blamed the economy. Sometimes he blamed luck. Every excuse felt logical. Every reason sounded believable. But one evening, something happened that changed everything. He met an old teacher who had once told him, "One day your biggest lessons won't come from books, they will come from your own patterns." The teacher asked only one question: "How many times have you promised yourself that tomorrow would be different?" Arjun laughed. "Too many." The teacher smiled. "Then your problem isn't that life is difficult. Your problem is that you no longer trust your own promises." Those words hit harder than any criticism. Think about that for a moment. Maybe you have also promised yourself that from Monday you would wake up early. Maybe you decided hundreds of times that today would be your last day wasting hours on social media. Maybe you plan to start your business, your fitness journey, your studies, or finally have that difficult conversation you have been avoiding. But somehow, nothing changed. Was it because you were lazy? Probably not. Was it because you lacked intelligence? Definitely not. Then why? Because there is something much deeper happening inside every human being. Your brain is designed for survival, not success. Success demands uncertainty. Growth demands discomfort. Change demands emotional risk. but your brain loves safety, even if that safety keeps you unhappy. Imagine living in a small room for 20 years. The room is dark, the air is heavy, the walls are old. You complain every day about how terrible the room is. Then someone opens the door and says, "Come outside." You look outside and see sunlight, fresh air, freedom. But instead of walking out, you hesitate. Why? Because even pain becomes comfortable when you have lived with it long enough. This is exactly what happens inside our minds. Many people stay in jobs they hate because uncertainty feels scarier than dissatisfaction. Many stay in unhealthy relationships because loneliness feels more frightening than disrespect. Many never chase their dreams because failure seems more painful than regret. And slowly, they convince themselves they are being practical. But deep inside, they know the truth. They are not protecting their future, they are protecting their fears. Now ask yourself something honestly. How many decisions have you made because you truly wanted them? And how many decisions were made simply because fear quietly pushed you in another direction? This invisible force has another name: self-sabotage. Most people imagine self-sabotage as doing something obviously destructive, but it rarely looks like that. Sometimes self-sabotage looks like perfectionism. I'll start only when everything is perfect. Sometimes it looks like overthinking. I need more information. Sometimes it looks like waiting. This isn't the right time. Sometimes it even looks like hard work. You stay busy every day, but never work on the one thing that could actually change your life. That is the strange part. Self-sabotage often disguises itself as responsibility. The human mind is incredibly creative when it wants to protect itself from emotional pain. Let's understand this with another story. A little girl once loved painting. Every afternoon, she filled notebooks with colors. One day, she entered a school competition. She was excited. She imagined everyone clapping for her. Instead, someone laughed at her painting. Another child said it looked childish. The teacher moved on without saying much. It lasted only a few seconds, but inside her young mind, something powerful happened. She unknowingly created a belief: my creativity is embarrassing. Years passed. She grew older. Whenever she wanted to express herself, she hesitated. Whenever opportunities came, she stayed silent. Not because she lacked talent, because one forgotten memory continued controlling her future. The strange thing about emotional wounds is that they do not disappear with time. They disappear only when they are understood. Many adults are still reacting to stories written during childhood. Someone who was constantly criticized becomes afraid of mistakes. Someone who never felt accepted becomes addicted to pleasing everyone. Someone who grew up around uncertainty becomes obsessed with control. Someone who experienced rejection starts rejecting opportunities before opportunities can reject them. Do you see the pattern? The problem is rarely today's situation. The problem is yesterday's emotional programming. Now, imagine carrying an invisible backpack. Every painful memory places another stone inside it. Failure, rejection, embarrassment, comparison, shame, disappointment. At first, the backpack feels light. Years later, you wonder why every step feels exhausting. You think life became harder, but maybe you simply forgot how much weight you have been carrying. The beautiful part is this: you are not your backpack. You are the person carrying it, and anything that can be carried can also be put down. But before that can happen, you must first notice that it exists.
Most people spend their lives trying to climb higher while carrying emotional weight they never stop to examine. That is why progress feels painfully slow. They focus on becoming stronger. Very few focus on becoming lighter. Think about a mountain climber. Would he carry unnecessary rocks to the top? Of course not. Then why do we carry unnecessary guilt, old anger, past failures, other people's opinions every single day? Because nobody taught us that emotional weight is just as real as physical weight, and that realization changes everything. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Even after recognizing these hidden burdens, many people still fail to change. Why? Because there is another invisible force, even more powerful than fear, quietly shaping every decision they make. And until you understand that force, the mountain inside you will keep growing, even while you believe you're moving forward.
The next morning, imagine Arjun waking up before sunrise. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about changing his schedule or chasing another motivational quote. Instead, he was thinking about one simple question. If fear is not controlling my life anymore, then what is? He stood in front of the mirror, staring at his own reflection. Nothing had changed on the outside. The same face, the same room, the same unfinished dreams. But something inside him had started moving. It felt uncomfortable, almost like discovering that the map you had trusted your entire life was pointing in the wrong direction. And that discomfort was important because real transformation never begins with confidence, it begins with awareness. Now, imagine your own life for a moment. Think about the last big decision you delayed. Maybe it was starting a business, maybe changing careers, maybe ending a relationship that was slowly breaking your spirit, maybe forgiving someone, maybe forgiving yourself. At first, you probably believed you were waiting for the perfect time. But what if the perfect time was never the problem? What if you were waiting to become a different person before taking a different action? That is where most people become trapped. They believe action creates identity. I'll become disciplined after I start waking up early. I'll become confident after I succeed. I'll become fearless after I win. But life works in the opposite direction. Identity creates action. The person you believe yourself to be quietly decides what you do every single day. Imagine two people standing at the edge of the same opportunity. Both have the same education, the same resources, the same amount of time. One steps forward immediately. The other spends months thinking. What made the difference? Not intelligence, not luck. The difference was the story each person believed about themselves. One believed, I can figure it out. The other believed, I might not be enough. Everything that happened afterward simply followed those beliefs. This is why changing habits without changing identity feels like trying to grow a tree while cutting its roots every day. For a few weeks, you may force yourself to stay disciplined. You may wake up early. You may eat healthy. You may work harder. But sooner or later, your old identity quietly pulls you back because your mind always tries to stay consistent with the person it believes you are. Have you ever noticed how someone who loses weight often gains it back? Or how someone who earns a lot of money suddenly makes decisions that destroy everything they built? From the outside, it looks confusing, but inside, something else is happening. If success feels unfamiliar, the mind often tries to return to what feels emotionally normal. Strange as it sounds, people do not always choose what is best for them. They often choose what feels familiar. Familiar pain is still familiar. That sentence alone explains thousands of lives. Some people stay surrounded by negativity because peace feels unfamiliar. Some avoid healthy relationships because chaos feels like home. Some reject opportunities because struggle has become part of their identity. Without realizing it, they recreate yesterday again and again. Arjun began noticing this pattern in himself. Every time life offered him a chance to grow, another voice appeared. What if people laugh? What if you fail publicly? What if you're not talented enough? Earlier, he thought those voices were protecting him. Now he realized they were protecting an old identity that no longer deserved to control his future. Think about a smartphone for a second. Every app works according to the operating system underneath it. If the operating system has serious problems, installing better apps won't solve anything. Your mind works the same way. Books, courses, seminars, productivity hacks, they're useful. But if the identity underneath them remains unchanged, every improvement becomes temporary. That realization frightened Arjun because he understood something few people ever do. His biggest battle wasn't against laziness. It wasn't against procrastination. It wasn't even against fear. His biggest battle was against the version of himself that had quietly accepted limitations as reality. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Someone compliments your work, but inside you think they are just being polite. You achieve something meaningful, yet instead of celebrating, you immediately think it wasn't enough. You compare yourself with someone else and suddenly forget how far you've already come. That isn't humility. Often, it's an identity that refuses to believe you deserve growth. Imagine carrying a pair of glasses with invisible scratches. Everywhere you look, the world seems damaged. You clean the windows, you change the lighting, you move to another room, but nothing changes because the scratches were never outside. They were always on the lens. Your beliefs are those lenses. If you believe people cannot be trusted, you'll notice betrayal everywhere. If you believe success belongs to others, every opportunity will look impossible. If you believe failure defines you, every mistake will feel permanent. But the moment the lens changes, the same world begins to look different. That is why true growth isn't about collecting more information. It's about replacing old interpretations with healthier ones. Arjun decided to perform a simple experiment. For 1 week, every time he caught himself saying, "I can't," he forced himself to ask another question. What evidence do I actually have? The results surprised him. I can't speak in public. Really? Or had he simply never practiced enough? I can't build a business. Really? Or was he afraid of looking inexperienced? I can't stay disciplined. Really? Or had he been trying to change everything overnight instead of changing one small action consistently? Slowly, the mountain inside him started losing its size. Not because life became easier, because the stories behind the mountain started falling apart. This is something you can experience too. The human brain often mistakes repetition for truth. If you repeat, "I'm unlucky," long enough, your brain begins searching for proof. If you repeat, "Nothing ever works for me," your attention starts ignoring every success. But the opposite is also true. If every day you remind yourself, "I can learn," your brain begins noticing opportunities to improve. If you tell yourself, "One step is enough for today," consistency becomes less frightening. Change rarely arrives as one dramatic moment. More often, it arrives as tiny decisions repeated until they become your new normal. Imagine standing beside a river. A single drop of water looks powerless, but millions of drops flowing in the same direction carve valleys through solid rock. Consistency is like that. Small actions appear invisible today, yet they quietly reshape your future. The world celebrates dramatic transformations because they look exciting, but almost every meaningful success is built on ordinary days that nobody applauds. The student who studies 1 extra hour, the entrepreneur who keeps improving after rejection,
the athlete who trains when nobody is watching, the writer who writes one page despite feeling uninspired. These moments seem insignificant, yet they become the foundation of extraordinary lives. Arjun finally understood why he had failed so many times before. He always chased motivation. He never built evidence. Motivation disappears with emotion. Evidence creates belief. Every small promise you keep to yourself becomes proof that you are changing. Every promise you break becomes proof of the opposite. That is why the smallest commitments matter more than the biggest goals. If you promise yourself 10 minutes of focused work and complete it, your identity grows stronger. If you promise yourself 5 minutes of reading and keep that promise, trust begins returning. You are teaching your own mind one lesson over and over again. I am becoming someone who keeps my word. And once that lesson becomes part of your identity, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling natural. But just when Arjun thought he had discovered the answer, life presented him with a challenge he never expected. Because changing your inner story is one thing, protecting that new story from the outside world is something completely different. There will always be people who remind you of your old identity. There will always be voices that say you've changed too much, that you're dreaming too big, that you're becoming unrealistic. The question is, how do you continue climbing when the people around you unknowingly try to pull you back down? That answer will decide whether your transformation becomes permanent or whether the mountain quietly rebuilds itself once again.